And it's my pleasure to welcome all of you here to today's Communications Forum Luncheon. Let me start by saying a few words about our upcoming luncheons. Next month, on Tuesday, June 11th, we'll have something special for you, a debate on whether it's time to change the FCC kid bid regulations. And our combatants will be former FCC Commissioner Rob McDowell and former FCC official Gigi Sohn. So that should be a good one. And our moderator, or should I say our referee, will be our own Dick Wiley. That's Tuesday, June 11th at the Willard Hotel. And in July, we'll be privileged to hear from Senator Gordon Smith, President and CEO of the National Association of Broadcasters. It's always a pleasure to have Gordon with us, and that will take place on Tuesday, July 23rd at the Fairmont Hotel in the West End. And today, it's a real pleasure for me to welcome someone who is at the heart of everything going on in the Federal Communications Commission. Tom Johnson is the FCC's General Counsel. Tom joined the Commission from his position as Deputy Solicitor General for West Virginia Attorney General Patrick Morrissey. Tom has also worked at the law firm of Gibson, Dunn, Crutcher, and as a law clerk for Judge Jerry Smith of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. Tom earned his bachelor's degree from Georgetown University and his law degree from Harvard Law School. As the FCC's chief attorney, Tom serves as the principal legal advisor to the Commission and its various bureaus and offices. Tom's Office of General Counsel represents the Commission in litigation, recommends decisions in adjudicatory matters, and performs a variety of other legal functions. We're looking forward to Tom's perspective on matters of the Commission, and the title of this talk might give us a clue. It's called Humility, the Media Regulator's Essential Virtue. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Thomas Johnson.
Thank you very much, Rick, for that kind introduction, and thank you to the Media Institute for inviting me to speak here today. I admire all that the Institute does to defend the freedom of speech and for its thoughtful work on communications policy. So as you heard, for the past 18 months, I've served as the General Counsel of the FCC. And in that time, I've witnessed how rapidly the ways that we communicate and consume media are changing based on new and evolving technological developments. But you don't need to be a communications lawyer to see that. Just consider how technology has reshaped one of our oldest and most sacred rituals, the wedding. Instagram turns every wedding guest into a photographer. Details are provided to guests on personalized websites. You can register for that carving set you've always wanted on Amazon. Your parents will post it all on Facebook. Friends will commit the more colorful and less discreet moments to Snapchat. It's even possible to ask your photographer to use a drone to take aerial footage of your wedding. Except not in DC. I learned that the hard way as I'm preparing for my own wedding, and in fact, it turns out that flying a drone in restricted airspace is a federal offense. It's good for a general counsel to know. It's what we call an unacceptable level of risk. Who could have predicted all this back in 1996 when the Communications Act was last substantially revised? If you were very prescient, you might have been able to predict some of the technologies involved: mobile phones, drones, new wireless networks, social media. But foreseeing all of these technologies and how they would revolutionize our lives would have been very hard. As the noted prophet Yogi Berra once said, it's hard to make predictions, especially about the future. And that is my topic for this afternoon: how difficult it is for regulators to predict how technology will develop and transform markets, and why that difficulty demands humility from our regulators. This is a particularly important lesson for the Commission, which stands at a unique crossroads between innovation and regulation. I'll start with a famously wrong prediction about technological progress from the U.S. Postmaster General in 1959. He predicted, quote, "Before man reaches the moon, your mail will be delivered within hours from New York to Australia by guided missiles. We stand on the threshold of rocket mail." Well, Apollo 11 reached the moon 10 years later, but we're still waiting to send those RSVPs via rocket. Now, it may shock the audience to know that the Commission has not always had the best crystal ball either. Consider the history of FM radio. FM was first unveiled at the Institute for Radio Engineers in 1935. It was met with rave reviews. Engineers were astonished by the sound quality. Many predicted it would soon render AM obsolete. The Commission was not so sure. In the beginning, the Commission doubted the technical viability of FM radio. And when the Commission was finally convinced that this technology would work, it allocated only a single megahertz for FM channels. The Commission reluctantly granted additional spectrum a few years later, in 1940, just in time for World War II to freeze civilian electronics production. If you were fortunate enough to have purchased an FM radio before then, it soon became worthless when in 1945, the Commission relocated FM frequencies up the dial. This effectively killed FM until 1960, when the Commission approved stereo broadcasting in FM. So the Commission delayed adoption of a superior technology for over 20 years. If not for the Commission, the greatest generation could have listened to Glenn Miller in high fidelity. The history of mobile wireless presents a similar cautionary tale. Cellular was first conceived in the 1940s, decades before. Zach Morris used his brick-sized Motorola to call Kelly Kapowski in the halls of Bayside High on Saved by the Bell. In fact, the basic idea for the cell phone was first introduced in 1945 in an article in the Saturday Evening Post. Now, around that time, carriers like AT&T urged the Commission to allocate capacity for a mobile wireless network. We didn't listen. Deciding that cellular technology was a matter of, quote, convenience or luxury, the Commission sharply limited the amount of spectrum available for its use, with the result that development lagged and prevented widespread commercial application. The Commission instead decided to devote more spectrum to broadcast television. Now, a broadcast is a very important medium for delivering content and information to consumers. The Commission overestimated the amount of spectrum that was necessary, with the result that viewers were stuck with snow and static at the higher ends of the TV dial and no mobile phones. Eventually, the Commission determined there was enough spectrum for both broadcast and cellular technology. But in the 40 years it took for the Commission to come to that realization, cost the U.S. economy tens of billions of dollars by one estimate. I'll share one more example from 1961 when an FCC commissioner infamously declared that, quote, there was practically no chance that communication space satellites will be used to provide better telephone, telegraph, television, or radio service inside the United States. Well, the nascent satellite industry had different ideas. That industry emerged in the 1970s with companies like HBO, TBS, and CBN. Just last month, Amazon asked international regulators to provide spectrum rights for a constellation of over 3,000 satellites for broadband internet connectivity. And we just last year approved SpaceX launching a satellite internet constellation of over 12,000 satellites. So again, another wrong prediction. The moral of each of these stories is the same. Regulators are not good futurists. And what predictive powers they may have are weakening in light of the quickening progress of technology. Technologies that in my childhood were considered science fiction are now coming to market or close to them. Digital personal assistants, augmented reality, and self-driving cars are just a few examples. Only weeks ago, a Google subsidiary gained approval for a drone delivery service. And Elon Musk recently tweeted that Tesla is developing a sentient leaf blower. I'm particularly excited about that. No one, including the Commission, knows what will happen next. The best we can do is keep our heads down and try to avoid being hit by a delivery drone. Consider also recent changes in the market for the delivery of video program. In March, the Motion Picture Association of America reported that subscriptions to online video services surpassed cable for the